Hello and welcome to the In Focus series section of Drishti IAS. I'm Aisha, and in today's episode we will be discussing about the High Seas Treaty. Will India ratify the High Seas Treaty? How many countries have ratified the High Seas Treaty, and what is the High Seas Treaty? So let us first understand the timeline. First we'll be looking at the news, then what is High Seas Treaty, about UNCLOS, what are the objectives of the High Seas Treaty, how many countries have ratified and how much ratification is needed more. In the end, prelims practice question. Topic is of relevance from general studies paper 1, that is geography. Let's begin. News talks about India to ratify High Seas Treaty. What is the agreement and its significance? So there is this High Seas Treaty, and as the name itself is telling that it talks about seas, and then India is about to ratify it. I think it is very clear that there are few different terms, like for example, when a country signs a treaty and when a country ratifies a treaty, these are two different terms. Signing of any treaty means that the country has become a part of it, but ratifying a treaty is different. Majority of the times you will see that these two terms are used differently. Ratification means that legal backing. The treaty has now got a legal backing. So that is why the signing date is different and the ratification date is different. And now India is a long partner with regard to the negotiations of the High Seas Treaty, and since the time High Seas Treaty is being talked about, but ratification was not done, and now India is about to ratify the High Seas Treaty. So the Indian government would soon sign and ratify the High Seas Treaty. So very soon India will be ratifying the High Seas Treaty, and the High Seas Treaty is a new international legal architecture for maintaining the ecological health of the ocean. So it basically talks about the oceans and about the health of the ocean. It means that how much pollution is there in the ocean, who is causing that pollution, who is responsible for that pollution, overall health of the seas, because seas or oceans are very important for the marine ecosystem and the marine life also, and how and what is the health of the ecosystem or marine ecosystem, oceans and seas and their health becomes very important. So high seas is a legal, important word is legal, because when anyone will ratify it, it will become legally binding. So it is a legal architecture for maintaining the ecological health of the oceans. And the treaty which was negotiated last year is meant for reducing pollution in oceans and seas, and for conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and other marine resources in ocean waters. So the biodiversity of the ocean waters, their conservation and their sustainable use will also be talked about. Then 91 countries have already signed the treaty, while 8 of them have ratified it. So in total 91 countries have signed it, but ratification has only been done by the 8 countries. So see the difference between the signing and the ratification. So India will very soon ratify it. So you will have to be very clear that High Seas Treaty will be legally binding in nature. It talks about the health of the ocean and about ocean ecosystem. Then it also talks about reducing pollution. Then it also talks about conservation and sustainable use. I am saying this and writing these words because these words will be important when you will do your answer writing practice, because when you do your answer writing practice, you will not write every single thing. You will have to write few very specific points, and those very specific points need to contain the keywords. So next is, now let us know about what is high seas. So high seas are agreement on biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. So the area in the oceans or seas where the national jurisdiction of a country ends, the area beyond that national jurisdiction is what is called the high seas, and the areas outside the national jurisdiction of any country. And the national jurisdiction extends up to 200 nautical miles, and if we will convert that in kilometers, so that will be 370 kilometers from the coastline, and an area that is called exclusive economic zone or EEZ. Now imagine this is the coastline, this is India's coastline, and from the India's coastline to 200 nautical miles. So the distance of 200 nautical miles is what is called the exclusive economic zone. So this exclusive economic zone belongs to India. India have a claim on it. But outside the area after or beyond the 200 nautical miles is what is called the high seas. So till 200 nautical miles is what India can claim, but after 200 nautical miles it will be the high seas, because that will be beyond national jurisdiction. Then they constitute about 64%. So high seas, out of all the area of the sea, 64% is high seas. Roughly 2/3 of the total ocean area and are considered global commons, and it is considered global commons. They belong to no one. High seas belongs to no one, and everyone enjoys equal rights for navigation, overflight, economic activities, scientific research, or laying of infrastructure like undersea cables. So because in the high seas no one has a claim on it, or the high seas is beyond the national jurisdiction of any country, so no country has a claim on it. And no country has a claim on it, it means that the region of the high seas belongs to everyone. And when the region belongs to everyone, every country can enjoy equal rights, and this equal rights can be with regard to navigation, overflight, economic activities, scientific research, infrastructure, etc. Then because it does not belong to anyone, so because these belong to no one, high seas are also no one's responsibility, because it does not belong to anyone, so no one's responsibility. And when it is no one's responsibility, no one looks after it. And when no one looks after it, this is what is creating problem, because the health of the high seas is becoming bad with regard to the increasing pollution. So many of these areas suffer from over exploitation of resources, biodiversity loss, pollution, dumping of plastics, ocean acidification, etc. Because this does not belong to anyone, so no one is taking care of it, and over exploitation of things in the high seas is taking place, and that is what is causing problem. And according to the United Nations estimates, about 17 million tons of plastics were dumped in the ocean in the year 2021. So in the year 2021, 17 million tons of plastics was dumped. Then now let's come to the UN Convention on Laws of the Seas, or UNCLOS. Now it is not that with regard to seas or the framework of the seas, that how the guiding lines should be there in the sea. Before the High Seas Treaty there was UNCLOS, but the High Seas Treaty talks about specifically the high seas, so they are specific and restricted to the high seas, but UNCLOS is overall guiding framework. So UNCLOS came into relevance in the year 1982, and it is an international governance mechanism for the ocean. So governance mechanism of the ocean, that how the oceans, how the countries must behave in the oceans. Then it is a broad framework. It is a broad framework for legitimate behavior on and use of seas and oceans everywhere. Legitimate behavior means legal. Then it defines the rights and duties of nations regarding activities in the oceans. The rights and duties of nations. So whatever rights the nations have in the ocean, and whatever the duties nations have in the ocean. So if the nations are taking advantages or is using or is exploiting the resources of the oceans, they on the other hand also have a duties to fulfill. Like for example, as a citizen of India, if we have fundamental rights, then we also have fundamental duties to fulfill, because we cannot only say that we have certain rights to do. So UNCLOS also defines the rights and the duties of the nations with regard to the use of the ocean or how the oceans must be used. Then it also addresses issues such as sovereignty, passage rights and rights of the exclusive economic usages. Then the general principles for equitable access and usage of ocean resources and protection and conservation of biodiversity and marine ecology. Equitable access and usage. So how the usage of oceans must take place. Now what are the objectives of the high seas, or what are the objectives on which the High Seas Treaty works? So that is conservation and protection of marine ecology, fair and equitable sharing of benefits from marine genetic resources, mandatory environmental impact assessment. Environmental impact assessment for any activity that is potentially doing pollution or damaging the marine ecosystem. So if you will see, conservation of the marine ecology or the marine biodiversity, protection of the marine ecology or marine biodiversity, then fair and equitable sharing of benefits. Whatever benefits is being taken from the oceans or the seas, that needs to be distributed equally, and the benefits must also be distributed equally within all the parties. Then environmental impact assessment will be mandatory and is mandatory if any kind of activities is being done, if any kind of exploitation is being done, then an assessment of the extent or what is the intensity of the pollution that needs to be done so that the impact can be measured. Then capacity building and transfer of marine technologies to developing countries. So it becomes the responsibility of the developed nation that because they are developed nation, they have a better R&D, that is research and development. The scientific research is also better. So they technologically is very well advanced as compared to the developing nations. So it becomes their duties that they need to transfer that technology to the developing nations and the least developed nations, so that the developing and the least developed nation can also work towards betterment of the usage and how much usage they are, or how much use of the resources the developing or the least developed countries are taking from the oceans or the seas. Then treaty also makes it mandatory to carry out a prior environmental impact assessment, as I just told you, for any activity that is potentially polluting or damaging the marine ecosystem or conservation efforts. So it is basically talking about for the preservation, conservation and mitigating the negative and the harmful impact that nations are doing to the high seas. Now with regard to the ratification, so the High Seas Treaty came into force only when a certain minimum number of countries will ratify it or will accede to it. So this will come into force. The High Seas Treaty will come into force when a minimum number of countries needs to ratify it, and that number is 60. But as of now, only 8 countries have ratified it. So for the High Seas Treaty to come into relevance, minimum 60 countries needs to ratify it. Many more countries will ratify it in the coming times. Then treaty would become international law 120 days after the 60th ratification is submitted. So whichever date the 60th ratification, that is the minimum 60 countries needed to ratify the High Seas Treaty for the treaty to come into force. So the day the 60th ratification will be done, so that day plus 120 days. So that day plus 120 days is what the treaty will become the international law. Now in the end of prelims MCQ, and you people need to tell me the answer in the comment section. The High Seas Treaty deals with oceans that are outside the national jurisdiction of any country, within the national jurisdiction of any country, within and outside the national jurisdiction of any country, or none of the above. We have discussed this in the video, so give me the answer in the comment section. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Till we meet next time. Keep reading, keep writing and keep subscribing to the channel. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.